In this lesson, we will apply three different theorems about the chords of a circle. Theorem 1 says that in the same circle or in congruent circles, congruent arcs will have congruent chords, and congruent chords will have congruent arcs. What that means is that if you were to have a picture like this, and we see that we have two chords, these blue lines, that are congruent, then if we have congruent chords, then the arc that those chords create, so from here to here, this arc, and then the arc from this point to this point, so the endpoints of the chord, those arcs would be congruent. So if the one arc were 80 degrees, the other arc would therefore be 80 degrees. And the converse is also true. If you do not know the measure of the chords, all you knew were the arc measures, both being 80, then we can conclude that the chords would also be congruent. So if the one chord was 4 inches, the other chord must also be 4 inches. Theorem 2 says that a diameter that is perpendicular to a chord bisects the chord and its arc. So here's a diameter, and if it's perpendicular to a chord such as this, where now we have a right angle, then what we can conclude is that this chord is being bisected and the arc is also being bisected. So if that chord were 8 inches total, then we have from there to here being 4 inches, and then from there to here also being 4 inches. And then the arc is also cut in half. So the arc from the endpoints of the chord right here would be bisected as well. So if the entire arc were 80 degrees, then this portion would be 40, and then the other portion would also be 40 degrees. And the third theorem says that in the same circle or in congruent circles, chords that are equally distant from the center are congruent. And the converse says that the congruent chords are equally distant from the center. So in this picture, we see that we have two chords. And if the distance from the center are the same, so the distance from the center to the one chord might be 2 inches, and then from the other chord would be another 2 inches. If that distance were the same, then we can conclude the chords are going to be congruent. So if the one chord were 5 inches, then the other chord would also be 5 inches. By the way, when we say distance from the center, we are referring to a perpendicular distance. So this segment needs to be perpendicular, because that is the shortest distance from the center to that chord. And the converse of that theorem is also true. That says that congruent chords, so if these chords are both 5 inches, those would be equally distant from the center. So if we were to measure the distance from the point to each of these congruent chords, we would find that they would be the same measure. And that concludes our lesson for today. We will see you next time.